So, as some of you know, several years ago I began a diet change where I transitioned most of my calories to eggs. And that worked out for the constraints that I operate under. It worked quite well. It had cascading benefits that were shocking to behold and saved me a lot of time. Nutrition benefits were great. I felt my blood sugar was a lot more even, just lots of energy, stable energy, wasn't so hungry all the time, and so on. So, and it ended up being a lot less expensive than things I was doing before. As I went through that, I kept making adjustments so that the way that I was consuming the eggs took less and less time. So less cleanup, less time to cook, etc. And I went through like boiled eggs and then smoothies, and then I was changing the ingredients on the smoothies because I didn't care so much over time if it tasted as good as when I started. And I finally got to the point where basically each day I was cracking and drinking 10 to 18, say, eggs raw, about two at a time, 2 to 3 at a time. So about every 2 hours I'd drink 2 or 3 eggs. And I ate other things too. I'd have a lunch that most people would probably find pretty Spartan, and then a normal dinner with my family. And the reason, again, I was doing this was that I'm at a point in my life where food doesn't really give me much joy. And so I'm just tuning this to what I need to get out of it. And mostly it's a time-saving thing because I don't have to fuss around with dishes and cooking and, going to find food. I stay in what I'm doing, so I spend more time on things that matter more to me. So I was having a discussion the other day with an uncle of mine who I'm emotionally close to, but geographically distant from, and he's the kind of guy that if you're not face to face, it's really hard to get a hold of him. He's not usually too excited to get on the phone, so it can be difficult to stay in touch. And we were having a good catch up, which is nice. And he likes to work out. He's older than me, and we were talking about health and nutrition and some things he's trying, and he asked me about the eggs, and he was really interested, and that was nice to have this conversation. And he contacted me after that with some data points, and he said, I was looking this up, and according to the internet, if you drink eggs, 40% of the protein in the egg is not available to you. Your body can't process it. And I said, I hope that's not true. And I Googled it immediately. And sure enough, peer-reviewed research, they've tested it. And it's true. And I thought, shoot. So I replied back and I said, dang it. So I immediately stopped drinking eggs. And I enumerated a few options for how I could consume them and still try to save as much time and reduce as many dishes as possible. And it was good. I kind of walked through some of the process that I had conducted to get to my current, or I guess previous now, habits. But some information along the way had changed. So if you care, and there's a point to all this. These are generalized principles. I'm just starting with the specifics to give context. But in the beginning, I was eating a lot of eggs all at once. And that's a really bad idea for me. I don't have a gallbladder, and so it's hard to digest large amounts of fat or other things, fiber, for example. And so cutting this down to 2 or 3 eggs every 2 hours, it turns out it calibrates really well with your body's ability to digest protein and use it, apply it to muscle building. And so that ended up working well for me, but that was something that evolved later, not in the beginning when I was pounding these egg shakes in the morning and just sticking to the 3 meals a day path, which meant that I had to eat a lot of eggs all at once. So, and a lot of that food ended up getting wasted because your body can only process so much at a time. So with all that in mind, the details had changed, and walking through the process again, at least partially, came to a different result. And so now, if you care, again, this is just for an example. It doesn't mean that it's going to have any application whatsoever in your life specifically, but we're going to zoom out in a second to the general. What I do is when I wake up in the morning, not to TMI you, but so before I go to the bathroom, I'll go to the kitchen and I put 6 eggs. Right now I might go to 9, I don't know, but 6 eggs in a pot, and I start boiling them, and then go to the bathroom, check the wood stoves, whatever. By the time I come back, the eggs are done. And so then I peel 2 of them and eat them right away, and then I'll come back 2 hours later. Remember, I get up in the middle of the night, and I'll eat another 2. And then there's 2 more. If I go to 9, we can keep going with this process. But basically, I've replaced the cracked eggs with boiled eggs, and everything works out fine. Now, I was thinking about boiling all the eggs I'd need for a week in a big pot and just keeping it in the fridge. I actually prefer warm boiled eggs to cold boiled eggs. And so I'm just going to do them one day at a time, and this works out. So what the heck's the point of all this, Mr. Eggman? Well, my point with this was, I've said before that everything that we believe is incorrect or incomplete. That's an axiom that falls out of the belief that truth is infinite. And it turns religion on its head, because modern religion is all about dogma, all about this idea that you can be done, and you find this, there are specific variations of examples that you'll find in any modern religion. But the idea is you can be done, do X, Y, Z, and you're good, as long as you don't do A, B, C. And that's just not true. It's a process. True religion is a process. God is a process. He's a being. But it's helpful sometimes to think of him as an outcome. But truly, he's a process. He's the way, the truth, and the life. And that's, the life is a flow. The way is a path. It's not an outcome. Okay? It's a path. And so a piece of that makes everyone super uncomfortable, because religion, it's like a bug light, and it attracts people who are searching for done. They're searching for good enough. They're searching for final security in the lack of uncertainty. But what God offers is very different. That's false religion. True religion offers you a process by which you can overcome all things. And you might say, well, that sounds like a final outcome. No. It's a process. It's a process. We could get deep into this, but just keeping it as superficial as we can. It's a process. So the egg thing provided me tons of benefits. But the second I learned that there's a plausible possibility that a better path exists, I investigated it. It was worth the time and effort to look into. In this case, it was a 10-second Google search. Search result, the papers. I read the one paper, but very, very quickly, that's all it took. Obviously, I'm wasting 40% of the eggs I eat. And if you have to drink raw eggs, that's a huge expense to waste 40%, right? And so I'm thinking, yeah, like my chickens produce these eggs. It's basically, by changing this, I can magically get 40% more eggs. Instantly, magically. Just by cooking them first. Okay, so then the challenge became, how do I cook these in the most efficient way? Because I have better things to do with my time than wash dishes, if I can avoid it. And I don't like eating tons of oil. If you want to fry eggs, you got to use the oil, or you got to use nonstick, and that has its own issues. So anyway, so I solved that problem. Now I've got a new path. It only took like a minute to figure all this out. And thank goodness someone else was involved, okay? So generalized principles are, it doesn't matter how good something seems right now. That doesn't mean that there's not something better. Does that mean you hold back on going all into your current best idea of what best is? No, you go all in. Because you can't find the limits of your beliefs if you don't go all in. You'll always have this excuse, this escape hatch, it's like a pressure cooker lid, this pressure release of, well, it's not working, but maybe it's because I wasn't going all in. You'll never know. But if you go all in, you know, hey, I didn't leave anything on the table. This is an edge of the belief. It just doesn't do what I need it to do. And so even if I stay with it, I'm looking for something that's better, and I know exactly what I need for it to be better. So another generalized principle with this, so you go all in on your beliefs, but thank God for other people. Right? So there's this perverse fetish, that I don't know how else to say it, of people loving the idea that they can figure out everything that's important themselves. We were all babies having our butts wiped by our parents at some point, or for orphans, whoever was taking care of us. But somebody was wiping your butt at some point. And unless you die young, someone's going to wipe your butt again. And so to entertain this illusion that's in the middle of that, you're this magical being that doesn't need anyone else. A person like that can pretend that they're subordinate to God, but in their own minds, they are God. To place yourself above the positive impact of others, from others, to place yourself above a positive impact from others is to believe that you are God, because he works through other people amongst many other options he's got. But that channel is actually pretty important. And so my uncle called me for my advice on something, which I was happy to tell him whatever I knew about it. And then he replied to that conversation by saying, I looked into one thing you suggested, and here's a limit to it that you don't know about. Did I say, who the heck does this guy think he is? I'm the one giving advice here. No. I said, my uncle's a rational being, and he cares about me. Because I've seen what he does for other people. Because, I've been his nephew my whole life. And so why would I doubt that he's got a motive of love in telling me that? Right? But even if he wanted to one-up me and say, oh, well, you gave me this good advice, but I'll do you one better. Thank you, Uncle. Good grief, folks. If someone gives you something better, how is that a bad thing? I don't understand, okay? And so it takes 10 seconds to Google this. That's step one. And am I Googling to prove him wrong? I hoped he was wrong. I told you that, and it's true. I wish it weren't so, because my life is easier when I can crack eggs and drink them. But it's not better. Easier is rarely better. Sometimes it is, and that's awesome. You hang on to that with two hands, right? But better is better, and everything else goes below better. And so he says, look, you're losing 40% of the protein. I don't want to waste 40% of anything. But there's two ways of seeing this. So I wanted him to be wrong because it's easier to crack eggs. But part of me wanted him to be right. Why? Because recognizing that I've been wasting 40% of something means that I get 40% more right now, magically, the second I push this button. So imagine if someone came to you and said, oh, there's this checkbox on your tax return, and all you have to do is put an X in there, and you could have been doing this your whole life. You've wasted 40% of the taxes you've ever paid. But you can do it now, and from here on out, you get that 40%. Why would you see that as a bad thing? You'd have to be insane. And guess what? Most people are. Because they care more about preserving that perceived value in the past than they do about getting the real thing in the future. Because it wasn't real in the past. That's what it means. If truth changes your retroactive valuation, it means it wasn't real. That's like, if you're a spouse and you find out, if you're married, you find out your spouse has been cheating on you for 15 years, you didn't know. And you're like, oh, the loss of the last 15 years, I thought that I had this and I don't. Look, you never had it. What you thought was real was not real. You haven't lost anything. You already lost it. It never was there. What you've gained is reality. And whatever hurt that causes, the bright side is the doors it opens in the future. Like, do you want to be in a fake relationship? Or in a relationship with a person other than who is real? And this applies to everything. We could talk about churches in this regard. So many people, when someone pokes into their sacred cow, they're like, man, I'm going to kill you. I'm so angry, I'm going to kill you, or I'll destroy you. I'll destroy your reputation. Or I'll flee from you because you dare tell me the truth on this, or something closer to truth. Or you could flip that around and say, I'm all into my church, and so if something's wrong here, I really got to know. Because I don't want to be all in to something that's not right. You see? So it's a total flip of how most people, away from how most people see this. At the end of the day, my passion is not drinking eggs. My passion is the things that I get to accomplish because my life is oriented the way it is. And in my life plan, one of the tasks is drink 2 eggs every 2 hours except for lunch and dinner. So drink 2 eggs every 2 hours from when I get up until it's time to eat lunch. And then I cut off the eggs. I have a little snack at 3 p.m. Every day, I'm like a little kid, but it's funny. I remember being a really little kid, and I don't know, my grandfather's church or something, they had this thing where you got, I can't remember if it was animal crackers or graham crackers, it might have been both, and a cup of apple juice. And I was all about that. It was like, I was looking forward to that. Every time it was time to go to church, I was like, I'm getting those snacks and apple juice. And you think that's just for kids, there's no reason you can't use those tricks on yourself. And so every day around 3 o'clock, you'll find me rummaging through a cabinet to get a jar of peanut butter. And I make a glass of, it's like a fake treat. I put a little milk in there. Instead of just mixing protein powder with water, I put a little milk in there. It's like half milk, half water. And in my mind, it's this special treat. So I have a spoon of peanut butter and a glass of protein powder with a little milk. And that's like my 3 p.m. look forward to that every day at 3. That's my snack between lunch and dinner. So, anyway, that's the life plan. It's serious, and you break it down to that level where it's not that all this is prescribed and you're a robot that you just go through the motions, but you take the time to think about, no, like, what would be the best possible thing I could do in a day? And now I'm just going to do that every day. But the second new information comes up, which you can't predict when that's going to happen, if it crosses the threshold, you switch back into planning. And you analyze this and you say, okay, I know all the reasons I chose to do this. Which of those has changed? Oh, none? Okay, then keep going. Oh, this one and this one, so now I have to look at that again and figure it out again. Okay, well, let's do boiled eggs and rock and roll. But living intentionally like this is orders of magnitude better than the alternative. I was talking to it was my mom the other day, and she's funny for many reasons. She might watch this, so I have to be careful. One of the ways she's funny is she doesn't really watch this stuff, much to my chagrin. But I sent her a specific video. I said, Mom, I laughed the whole time I was making this because I was thinking of you watching it. So you need to watch it because you'll laugh too. And she did, and she had a good time. But she was like, I was so surprised because I was expecting this super religious message. Her and I don't have the same religious beliefs. Of course, I don't know anybody that does, but hers are kind of far from mine. And further than you might expect because of our relationship, but she was expecting this really religious message, and she's like, but you just kept giving advice for how people could have a better life. And I mean, you mixed in scriptures and you rooted that, you showed how this was in line with what you believe. But I was really expecting like something preachier, something like more religious. And she was saying this as if it were a good thing, just to make that clear. And I just cracked up. I said, well, that's great. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. So, you know, people can embed themselves in what they think is religion all day long and never change and never actually come closer to something better. Not in my opinion, in their opinion. They're just hamsters on a wheel. So when you get new information, sometimes it has to cause change. And that's always a good thing. Because if you do this correctly, the only changes you will make will be improvements. And improvement always means it's better than it was before. So I hope something here may have helped you, but at a minimum, I wanted to share what I've learned about eggs because I know that I've mentioned this in the past, and I don't want anyone else to keep making the same mistake.